Today we'll start Nun Tes Amud Beis Tanur Rabbanan 59b. It's about 6 lines from the bottom, 7 lines from the bottom. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. Because of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. It should be a panacea. Panacea. Tanur Rabbanan, start in the Braisa. Anusa satzme mafuta satzme layisa vimnasa nasi. Talking about a Kohen Gadol has to marry a virgin. Let's say that she's not a virgin, but it's his fault. He had lived with her, either raped her or seduced her. So he shouldn't marry her. It's a problem over there. It's oblia. Yeah. There's a problem because he has an obligation to marry her, doesn't he? He has to pay a fine. We'll see in a moment. Vimnasa nasi, but if he does marry her, then the marriage is a good marriage, which we assume right now means that they stay married, but we're going to see it's not so simple. Anusas chavera yemafutas chavera layisa. If someone else had raped this girl or seduced her, so he's not allowed to marry her. That's the obvious part, because she's not a virgin. So we're talking about a Kohen Gadol. V'im nasa, but if he does marry her, obviously they can't stay married. But what about the children? So she's not a divorcee, and she's not the widow, which had a negative prohibition. Thou shalt not, Here it was, the prohibition was that he should marry a virgin. It was a positive command. Question is, if a violation of a positive command, as we're going to see in the Gemara, if that creates a chalal, if the children become a chalal, we'll see in the Gemara. So that's a machlekes between Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and the Chachamim. Okay. We said that if he marries the Anusa Satzmai, the girl that he himself had lived with, so the marriage is good. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Rav Huna says the name of Rav. Rav Huna is the famous student of Rav. Umaitzi beget. Yeah, the marriage is good. What does that mean? That he has to divorce her. Divorce her with a document. It's not like it was no marriage. It's a marriage. But so what does it mean that he married her? The marriage is good. We thought that meant that they're allowed to stay married. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, Loimar shein meshalim knas b'mafuta. Yeah, by the girl that's seduced and the girl that's raped, there's a fine that comes along with. Now, if she's raped, the fine is automatic. He always has to pay the fine, and he's supposed to marry her also. If he seduced her, then he only pays the fine if he doesn't want to marry her. So what happened here is that he marries her, and he doesn't have to pay the fine. So the marriage is considered a good marriage, that it avoids the fine that comes along with seducing a girl because he married her. Yeah.
It's only with a virgin.
Yeah, the fine has to do with what she would get as a married woman. He caused her to lose that ksuba. He has to pay up that loss. Her loss. She has sort of like a loss in value. Okay. Ozal Rav Gavia mi Beiksil Amar l'Shmaita Kamida Rav Ashi. We've had Rav Gavia before. Rav Gavia from Beiksil goes and he says over this halacha from Rav Huna Marav. He says it to Rav Ashi. 300 years later, of course. Amalei, so he says, Rav Ashi says, Varav Rabbi Yechanan Damri Tavaya by Geras and Mukatzeis Layisa Vimnasa Nasi. What happened by Geras and Mukatzeis? Geras was a girl that was mature already, and Mukatzeis was a girl that had with an accident. She lost her basulim, the virginity. So it says that the Kohen Gadol should not marry her, but if he does, it's considered a good marriage. And we said, why is it a good marriage? Because what would happen is that since she is going to be a begeris automatically, even if he does marry her when she's a katana, but ultimately she's going to be a begeris. In mukaseitz. Mukaseitz just means that she loses the basulim. If he does marry her, she's going to lose the basulim.
It's not really right to say she's not a virgin. It's right to say the evidence. She's lost a piece of skin.
Right.
Doesn't mean she's not a virgin.
Right.
So why should that be? So be an issue.
Yeah. I guess the
Unless Lucas Ace has some sinister implication.
no.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
On the commentary in English, it actually clarifies what you said. If this ruling completes the statement of Rav Elazar and Rav Shimon, see brief's note, it should be translated, quote, but he may not marry a woman wounded by a piece of wood. So that would change the whole nuance in the thing. It's
Wounded.
not that she's not wounded, it's just a wounded.
Right.
That situation.
Right.
Thank you. Good. Well, it answers your question. Not my question, right?
So so what happens now? We're saying that he's not supposed to marry begeris mukaseitz. Im nasa nasi. Alma, seifelias begeris tachtav, seifelias mukaseitz tachtav. What was the issue? What was the issue here? The issue was that we're saying that he wasn't lechatchila supposed to marry her, but if he does, the marriage is acceptable. And the explanation that we gave was because ultimately that's what's going to happen to her anyway. She's going to end up losing the basulim. She's going to be married to this, but she's going to end up becoming mature when she's married. So what's going to happen here also? We're discussing if it's be'ula satzmai, if he was the one that caused her to lose the basulim because he lived with her. So what's going to happen? Ultimately, she's going to lose the basulim. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same. So hachanami, seifelias be'ula tachta. It's going to end up that there. It's in others. The comparison here is a perfect comparison. By geres and mukaseitz and anusas and mefutas atzmai. Since by the first two, the marriage, they remain married. They don't have to get divorced. So by the third one, which is exactly the same, they should he should also be able to remain married. As a question on Rav Huna Marav that says that the marriage is good, but they have to get divorced. Umar says kasha.
I mean, this is kind of a variation of the end justifies the means. The end here was the same with all the various means. But all the cases we had before with the Yavam and this and that, didn't where we said, does it start at the beginning or what it will eventually be? I thought the conclusion there was it depends the here and now, the beginning, not what it will eventually be.
Are you referring to when?
Yeah,
When does the zika start from the marriage or
Right.
does the zika start from the death? I was
I thought the conclusion was it started from the beginning, from the marriage.
from the marriage. That was an opinion. And how does that connect to this?
Because no, I'm saying over there, we said something starts from the beginning.
Oh,
And here we're saying, no,
Uh-huh.
no, it starts from the end. Ultimately, it'll be this, therefore it's irrelevant.
uh-huh,
It just seems that it
uh-huh.
switch sides. Whatever that's.
Pretty sure. Won't get God to shut
Will you
up.
be quiet?
The wife was pregnant.
Yeah.
So that really addresses that
Uh-huh.
subject. that was raised.
Right.
If we get into the question of whether the widow is pregnant.
Yeah.
What happens? I think we have a big discussion.
Yeah. But over here, there's
Okay.
a difference because
Like,
here
listen,
we're dealing with how strict are we going to be on him at the beginning of his marriage if right after he's married, he's going to be in the same situation anyway? That's what we're saying. I mean, he's going to be in that situation. We're going to tell me that now he can't, has to divorce her. And if he would have married her as a basula, so she'll be exactly the same situation where he is right now. So that's Rav Ashi's question. Okay. Anusas chaver mafutas chaver la Yisrael v'mnasser Rab Elazar ben Yaakov mavlad chol v'chamer mavlad kasher. We quote the Brisa. Brisa said that if someone else had raped this girl or seduced this girl, so he's not supposed to marry her. But if he does, there's a machlekes what happens with the child if the child is a chalal, non-kayan. Talking about he's a kayan gadol. If the child is a non-kayan or not, Chum say the vlad is kosher. Okay. Elazar ben Yaakov says the child is a chalal. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav again. Rav Huna, the famous student of Rav, says halacha Rab Elazar ben Yaakov, the child is a chalal. Rav Gidl Amar Rav. Rav Gidl was also a student of Rav. He says that halacha Rab Elazar ben Yaakov. Okay, we trust you. Halacha is like Rab Elazar ben Yaakov. Iked Amri, there are those that say this differently. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, my time with the Rab Elazar ben Yaakov. There really was a question. What is the reason for Rab Elazar ben Yaakov? Savalak Rab Elazar. Why does he paskin like Rab Elazar ben Yaakov? We said because he paskins Rab Elazar ben Yaakov paskins like Rab Elazar. Rab Elazar is Rab Elazar ben Shemua, who we had before. That Rab Elazar holds Panay haba ala pnuya shalela shemisha sasa zaina. That if a man and a woman have relations and they're not married, that woman becomes a zaina. She's considered what the Torah calls a zaina, which in English is a prostitute.
Man.
We don't discuss the man. Scott's free. That's not relevant. But the only important thing is she allowed to now marry a kayan? So what happened over here is that we're explaining according to Rav. You see that we have one halacha that a kayan gadol is supposed to marry a virgin. He didn't. He married someone that some other fellow had lived with. So she's not a virgin. So he violated the law of marrying a virgin. So Rav says, okay, the children, based on the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the children are going to be chalalim. There's a chalal because of the violation of that law. So why does he paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? The answer is because he also holds like Rabbi Eliezer. And now Rabbi Eliezer holds that because this woman had relations with someone else, so she becomes a zaina. So it's not the basula, it's not the virgin that caused the child, the lack of being a virgin that caused the child to be a chalal. It's the zaina that causes the child to be a chalal. So we got around this by adding in one other law.
An assumption that the woman in that situation has relations for financial gain.
And then,
No,
oh, you're saying if there's payment, why she becomes a zaina? Right. No, for this purpose, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're talking about the money is going to be used to buy a korban, that's something else. But he's just saying that any woman that would be open to have relations with someone that's not her husband is a zaina. That's a very strict opinion. Yeah. So there's a very lenient opinion that says that if she would ever say no to anyone, then she's not a zaina. That's the opposite extreme. This is the extreme that if she would say yes to anyone, she's a zaina. Right? Ikad Amri, those that say my time. Okay, yeah. Me savala kavasei. 1 second. Does Rav really paskin like Rabbi Elazar that says that a woman that has relations out of marriage or before she's married is considered a zaina? There's a problem. We have a rule that the teachings of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov are perfect. They're not a lot, but they're perfectly clean. That means the halacha always follows Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Bila Baha, when it comes to Rabbi Lazar, Amar of Amram, Salif. Some have the words Amar Rav, but Amar of Amram, Rav Amram says that Ein halacha Rabbi Lazar. We don't paskin like Rabbi Lazar. So there's a problem in the way that halacha plays out. That I can't say that I rule like Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov because he follows Rabbi Lazar. If ultimately I don't rule like Rabbi Lazar and I rule like Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, it becomes problematic when you're trying to determine why is the halacha like Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov if you're going to follow an opinion that we don't hold of. The Gemara says, yeah, you're right, kasha. That's a problem. That's not going to fit. Rav Ashi Amar. Just 1 second. Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, "B'yesh chalal mechayve asay kamiflagi." Rav Ashi says the explanation for the machlekes Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov and the Chachamim is not if the woman becomes a zayna with having one relations with someone. It has to do with, since this Kohen Gadol did not marry a virgin, which is a positive command that he's supposed to, he violated the positive command. He married someone that wasn't a virgin. So does that create a chalal, a violation of a positive command? Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov said, "Yesh chal mechayv yaseh." Rabban Savri ein chal mechayv yaseh. That there's not, they don't become a chalal if it's a neglect of a positive command. My time there, Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov. Why does Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov say that they become a chalal? Well, the ksiv, it says in the pasuk. Now, in case someone's not going to do the chumash today, for some reason we can learn it over here. Today's chitas. It says, I think, Almano grusha v'chalala zayna seila la yikach kiyim besula v'gaimer ksiv la yichal zar bama v'kula. Pasuk says a widow, a divorcee, and a chalala, and a zayna, a child from one of the forbidden unions to a Kohen, or a zayna, these he shall not marry, rather a virgin he should marry. And then it says, and he should not profane his children. And what's that going on all of what was said above? Which means if he doesn't marry a virgin, the children will become a chalalim. But Rabbanan, why do the Rabbanan say that that's not true? A chalal would only come from if he marries a widow or a divorcee or a zayna or a chalala, but not if he doesn't marry a virgin. The Rabbanan say eila hifsak inyan. In there it says es eila layikach, these he should not take. That says that those, the widow and the divorcee and the chalala and the zayna, those he shall not take. And if he does, then the child is a chalal or chalala. But what it says after the eila, he's the Kohen Gadol.
His children.
Well, if they're a chalal, then they're not considered Kohen, and they're forbidden to marry a Kohen, a girl. Yeah, so so eila hefsek inyan, because there's the word these in the middle, so that stops, separates the laws, and the halala and the halal only comes from the first 4 prohibitions, the negative prohibitions. Almana, grusha, halala, zayna. Yeah. You know, the last name Azulai is an acronym for Isha, Zayna, v'chalala, lo yikacho. And then they have a discussion why the Chida is not a Kohen, if that was his last name. Because it sounds like it would be a Kohen last name. But apparently the Chida wasn't a Kohen. Okay. Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov Aimer Eila Lemutinin. Yeah, well, it sounds. Yeah, well, no, it would be a great name for a Kohen, saying that their status, that they're not allowed to marry those women. Isha Zayn v'Halal Le'Yikacho.
That's a good name. Is his last name? Why did you say Cohen pure? Cohen follows the rules. Why Cohen hooker? This, that.
Whoa.
It's just he's just so this. Henry Cohen, Henry VIII. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Eimer Eila L'muti Nida. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, according to him, what is the pasuk Eila in the middle of the whole story? Why does it say these? If these is not significant, it continues afterwards. Don't stop in middle if you want to continue. So he says, no, these is coming to teach me that if a Kohen has relations with a Nida, his wife that's a Nida, the child is not a Chalal. It's L'ma'ute Nida. Only those, but not if she's a Nida, the child would not be a Chalal.
Is there a term for children
From a Nida?
a relationship like that? Yeah.
It doesn't really, there's like something called Pugum, but it doesn't really have any halachic significance.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, what is that? That
Oh boy.
someone that was born from,
They want to make sure that the terrorists are practicing
Oh.
terrorism spot at the time of conception.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
So it's a
New
lush
terms.
just a.
Come on, Oslo, Hadatanya, me Ela to Isa Chalal Viata Isa Chal Minida. We have a statement, a brisa, that says that only from these becomes a halal, but not from the child of a nida. Who would that come on? Who does that go like? Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. That would fit perfectly with Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, because that's what he says that Eila is coming to exclude. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov nichtavei leila lebesayf. Gemara's challenges Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov the following. It says like this, that the Chachamim say that if there was a positive command on the Kohen Gadol to marry a virgin, a basula, and he violated that, the child does not become a halal. Why? Because it says from these, the child will be a halal. And then it continues that he should marry a virgin. What does it mean from these? Everything that was said previously, which is only,
16,
no,
prohibitions or-
no, the only the four of a widow, a divorcee, a halala, and a zaina. Only from those it will be a halal. So it says Eila in the middle to tell me not if he marries someone that wasn't a virgin. That will not be a halal.
So a woman born in
A Kohen Gadol marries a widow.
Right, but she
the
had a
child-
previous relationship, so that would still be us.
Yeah, but it's not because of the previous relationship. It's because she was married. It's not because she's not a virgin. It's because she has a get, not a get. She had a marriage
Oh,
that
okay.
was dissolved through a divorce,
Okay.
through either death or divorce.
I see.
So, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Eila does not interrupt the sequence. Eila just teaches me some side halacha that if she's a nida, the child is not a chalal. According to the Chachamim, Eila interrupts the sequence, and it says that after the word Eila, nothing is there's no chalal after that. So the question is, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, why does it have to say Eila in the middle to interrupt if it's continuing afterwards? If it includes if he doesn't marry a basula, so why does it have to say Eila there? Say Eila at the end. All of these, which is correct, all of the above would create a halal. Okay. We're holding now Tanu Rabbanan on Daf Samach 68. Yeah, Tanu Rabbanan, Achayse Arusa. Switching topics a little bit, but you still have to remember some details. We have a new topic. A Kohen is not allowed to become Tameh. He's not allowed to go to the cemetery, to the hospital if there's someone there. That's the morgue. It's not allowed to be in the vicinity, in the area of a corpse, unless it's a close relative. Now, who are the close relatives?
Father, mother, sister.
Father, mother, sister, brother, son, daughter, wife. So when we said the father, mother, sister, brother, the Torah says that the sister is only a chaysai habasula, a sister that's a virgin.
Mhm.
Well, let's say she's a virgin, but she's engaged, she's betrothed to someone else. So it has to be a very close relative. When the sister marries, so she's not considered the close relative anymore. She's now the relative of the husband, she's the wife of someone else. She's not part of that family. So let's say she's still a virgin. So it follows the laws, the exact detail that's specified in the Torah, but she's betrothed. So this becomes a machlekes. Achaisi arusa, Reb Meir Reb Yudah metamela. It's a machlekes between four of the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva. Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda on one side, and Rabbi Yossi and Reb Shimon on the other side. Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda say that she's considered the close relative of the Kohen because she's still a virgin, and he goes to the cemetery for her. He becomes tamei for her. Rabbi Yossi and Reb Shimon say ein metamela. Rabbi Yossi and Reb Shimon say no. She's already considered married. She's only betrothed, but she's considered not. Rebbe Lazar. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
You just mentioned them before, both of them,
We had Rebbe Lazar before, yeah.
both Ben Shamua and Ben Yaakov.
Yeah. Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov wasn't a student of. Do you have it over there as a student of Rabbi Akiva?
That's the same one.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting.
With the little B in parentheses, a base, which I don't know if it's anything to refer to.
Beis, because there's 2 Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakovs. That's what it's
Oh,
the Beis.
so that,
There's a higher one. So you want to tell me that Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov is a student?
one's on the far right, one's on the left.
Yeah, the original Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov was up here.
Oh,
That's who I thought we were talking about before.
I thought you told me.
Yeah, but maybe you're right. Maybe it's if you're correct that Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov is the second one, the student of Rabbi Akiva, then that would tell me that Rabbi Aaron Hyman Sefer told us to know that he claims Mishnah Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov Kavanaki is referring to both of them. Becomes very interesting. Because we said before, Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov, the halacha is like Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov. The problem is there's 2. So maybe we're talking about the second one. Or whatever. How do we, So he claims that it's referring to both. They're playing on the name that the halacha is like Rebbe Lazar ben Yaakov, and it's referring to both the first and the second. Okay. Anyway, there's a big machlekes here. Anusa mafuta. Let's say she's not a basula anymore. Why? Because she was raped or she was seduced. Everyone agrees that he doesn't become contaminated. So she's not a basula. Mukaseitz. This is an interesting problem. She had an accident and she was hit by a piece of wood. So she's not a virgin. So can the Kohen become Tamiter? So here we have Ein Metamala Divrei Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon holds that he can't become Tamiter. Yeah, this is Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon is alone in this. Reb Yossi, who was siding with Reb Shimon a second ago, just dropped him. This one you're on your own. The only sister that the Kohen becomes tummy to would be if she would have been eligible to marry a Kohen Gadol. And because a Mukaseitz is not eligible to marry a Kohen Gadol, like we said before, so therefore the brother, which is a Kohen, is not allowed to become contaminated if she passes away. Ubaygeres metamila divri kol adam. Let's say it's a sister, but she's not a virgin fully because she's already matured. And we discussed this before, when a girl matures, that she loses part of the virginity, part of the basulim. However, when it comes to contamination, the Kohen does become contaminated to her, even though she's not a full basula, as a basula that a Kohen Gadol would be allowed to marry, according to everyone. Yeah, so the halacha switches over here regarding the Kohen Gadol being allowed to marry. Actually, it's interesting because Reb Shimon has no problem. We just said, according to Reb Shimon, he only becomes contaminated if she's allowed to marry a Kohen Gadol. And because she's a Mukatzeitz, so she can't marry a Kohen Gadol, so the brother doesn't. What about Begeres? You just told me everyone holds that if she's mature, everyone holds he becomes a contaminated ter. And Begeres is a machlekes. If a Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a Begeres, well, it turns out, don't worry about it, because Reb Shimon holds that a Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a Begeres. So when it comes to a Begeres, a mature girl, everyone agrees that the brother becomes contaminated to her. Okay.
Is there a procedure for chapters?
They were supposed to marry, if they have to marry a child, then they have to be a Nara, to be in between 12 and 12 and a half.
It's only a 6-month period. So
Yeah.
that's
All right. Or
what's
he can theoretically marry Katana as well.
How does anybody know? that she-
Oh. In other words, you're asking if you can rely on the minastam.
I mean, there's some girls it doesn't take. It happens.
Right.
Maybe that's just a statement from Hashem that she wasn't supposed to marry.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how else to.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be automatic unless you know. It would be she's considered a basula until you know. Okay. My time with the Rameh of Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason for Rameh and Rabbi Yehuda that they say that an arusa, she's betrothed, the sister is betrothed, but they still become the kohen still becomes tummy to her. So it goes like this. The Darshi Hachi. They read the pasuk like this. When it says the sister that's a virgin, today's chumash, pratla anusa mefuta. This is excluding that if she's not a virgin. Why? Because she was either raped or seduced. Maybe I should exclude also a mukaseitz if she was hit by a piece of wood and she's not a virgin. It says that wasn't to a man. So because it adds those words in, she was not to a man, so therefore she's included. So 1 second. What about the Arusa? It wasn't through a man that she became not a basula. Now we have one more word. Hakroiva elav, that's close to him, that's related to him, he's allowed to become tummy. And it says Hakroiva l'rabes arusa. This is including an arusa. An arusa is still considered close to the brother. Oh, I just realized the way I learned this is that it's referring to arusa is kroiva to the brother. It's including, but maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it means l'rabes arusa means to a kohen that it's considered he's betrothed to her. Maybe it's the other way. How do they say in the English? Maybe arusa means the wife. I was learning this.
It was near, quote unquote.
It's near to the brother. Okay,
Near
good. So I was correct. That was good. Otherwise, it wouldn't fit with the whole sugi here. Okay. Arusa. A love to him, l'rabes abigeres. So we have two inclusions here. Well, actually, there's three inclusions. The mukaseitz was hit by a piece of wood. The arusa, she's betrothed to another man, and she's a beger, she's mature. All of them, the brother is metamatar, according to Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda. When it says a love, the Rabbi Sabigeres, the Gemara says halam alikra. I don't need a love to teach that to me, according to Rabbi Meir. When you go back to what we learned before about who the Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry, so it says, Isha bibsulea yikach. In her basulim, in her virginity, he should marry. Now the Gemara over there said that the Reb Meir held that if it would have said basula, I'm sorry.
Those three circumstances you said what?
Mukaseitz,
The
Arusa,
Arusa,
and the Begeres, the
Begeres.
mature girl.
Those were
You go to the field.
Those, the Kayan is allowed to become contaminated
oh,
to his sister, even if she was a Mukaseitz and Arusa and a
What did
Begeres.
blue light stand for again?
Isha Zaina v'Chalal Alei Kacha. So over here, we go back to a machlekes if a kohen gadol is allowed to marry a Begeres, a woman that's mature, because she lost some of the basulim, and that's a machlekes between Reb Meir and versus Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon. There you have Reb Elazar. Where Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon said that they're allowed to marry a Begeres. Reb Meir said no, they're not. Now, what was that based on? What the word basula implied? Did it mean a full basula or a partial basula? Because then when it says bibsuleha, so then that would take it the other way. So Reb Meir said that basula meant miktsas basulim, even if she's only partially. In other words, it would include Begeres. Then because it doesn't say basula, it says bibsuleha, it means that a Begeres not. And Reb Shimon and Reb Elazar held differently. They said basula meant even partial, a full basula. The basula means so even if she's partially a basula, even if she's a Begeres.
And this goes back to whether or not
That means she matured.
her brother can
She matured.
visit her in a cemetery.
So then the skin is not as complete as it was when she was younger.
So what's the difference between that and Bulgarians?
And that is a Begeres.
Yeah.
Begeres.
Really?
6 months after?
Makat eight.
No, a mukas eitz is if she lost the basulim because of
And
an
that's
accident.
maturity also.
No, not because
necessarily.
not because of maturity. That was an accident.
Oh.
A Begeres. Yeah, you're thinking about that. Basula means that she never had relations. Yeah, but there's two ways of learning basula. There's two ways of looking at the word basula. It doesn't mean the abstract that, or it doesn't mean literally the skin. Yeah, well, then that would be the abstract, but not necessarily is that the pshat in basula. Basula could mean literally the skin, or you could learn that it means no, she never had relations. I mean, that's a way of calling that she didn't have relations, that she's a basula. But we're not looking at the word, we're looking at, it's a figurative. But this too, that's a machlekes, Reb Meir and others. How to look at the word basula, that a kohen gadol has to marry a basula, doesn't mean that she never had relations. It doesn't mean that it's intact. That's too. Okay, so now because Reb Meir holds that bisuleha means 100%, that means basula without the extra yud means that even partial. So when it says chesa basula that he could become contaminated to her, we learned that afilu miktas basula mashma. So we know already, without the word a love, that the brother could become contaminated to his sister if she's a Begeres. So it says it's no. I need the word a love. Maybe just like over there, it says the word basula by the kohen gadol that he's not allowed to marry a girl that's not a basula. In it over there, it says basuleha as well, which tells me that she needs to be fully and not a Begeres. Malala nara. Nara could have thought when it comes to tuma. When is the kohen allowed to become contaminated to his sister? Only if she's 12 years old. Kamash Malan comes to tell us not so. The Elav tells me that the laws of contamination and the laws of who the kohen gadol is allowed to marry are totally different.
This is regarding a cemetery. Whether or not
Yeah, going into a
she-
cemetery, can he go to the funeral? That's going to be different than if the kohen gadol would be allowed to marry her. Yeah, according to Reb Meir, kohen gadol cannot marry a Begeres, but according to Reb Meir, a kohen can become contaminated to his sister. That's a Begeres. What's wrong?
Two different levels.
The skin is thinner. So skin never skin, so it doesn't have to stick with them. Both prove the same thing. Well,
Yeah, it would have to do with, the logic is not perfectly clear, but whichever way you look at it, it's going to be something to do with that. If she's if there's any sort of disgrace for the Kohen Gadol, then it wouldn't be acceptable. So if she's not a basula, that would some sort of disgrace, the Kohen Gadol has to be only the perfect. The question is, why, if she's a begeris, does that lower her status? So yeah, that's a. If she's an old woman, married a 90-year-old woman, so, I don't know, but she's a difference between 12 and 12 and a half, because that's the cutoff point.
Let's see if she would become an Elanus later.
Oh, and let's we're going to discuss islandness also. Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, they had a different opinion. They said that a rusa, a woman that's betrothed, the kohen cannot become contaminated to his sister that's betrothed. My time, what's their reason? So Darshi Hachi, they learn it differently. It says Achaisa, that's a basula, sister that's a virgin. Prat la nusa mafuta mukasetz. It's excluding those three. A betrothed sister, a sister that was seduced. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Prat la nusa. It's excluding, not a betrothed. It's excluding a girl that was raped. A nusa, not a rusa. A nusa, girl that was raped. A girl that was seduced, or a mukasetz. Asher loy haisa, that was not to a man. Prat la rusa. That's excluding a fourth one, the arusa, the betrothed sister. Hakroiva, that's close to him. L'rabbe sarusa shenis garsha. This is very interesting. According to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, if she's betrothed and she dies, the kohen cannot go to the funeral. But if she gets divorced from that fellow, he can yes go to the funeral. So it's only while she's in that state of betrothal. If she's married, for sure can't go. Everyone agrees to that. But if she's betrothed, according to this strict opinion, he can't go to the funeral. This is Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon. But once she's divorced, he can. And a love, as the Rabbi says, a begeris, everyone holds that if she's over 12 and a half, he can still go to the funeral. The Gemara goes back to analyze what happened over here. Hakreva l'Rabbi Sarusis in Iskarsha, when the word hakreva, which is close to him, is coming to include if she was betrothed and then divorced. Rab Shimon, this doesn't fit with Rab Shimon's view. But this is all in Rab Shimon's view. Rab Shimon says, Kohen Gadol can't marry a divorcee. How can he become contaminated to her? She's divorced. Gemara says, Shani Hasan, the Rabbi Yerachmana Kreva. Oh, special pasuk. Doesn't fit with all the logic of Reb Shimon, but we have a pasuk that changes things. The pasuk says Hakreva, specifically to teach me that. Gemara says, Yihachi mukaseitz nami. So what about a mukaseitz? If she lost the basulim because of an accident, where it says, well, Ravi Kreva Achas V'Leishtayim. It only says Kreva once. It's only including one girl, one sister that he can become contaminated, not two. It says Amari says, so why do you choose the betrothed sister that's now divorced versus the mukaseitz? Gemara says, there's a big difference. The betrothed girl is still a perfect virgin. Not perfect as in Bageris or not, but she's still a virgin. The mukaseitz is not. So that's why the mukaseitz is not included in this when it comes to becoming contaminated. They have a very strict view over here. They say that a kohen can't. What did Reb Meir hold about mukaseitz?
She's someone who's a mukaseitz is considered a nusa.
Well, according to Reb Shimon and Reb Yossi, a kohen cannot become contaminated to his sister if she was a mukasates, if she had an accident that she lost her basulim. And according to Reb Meir, she can't. He can. It's a machlekes about a mukasates. Reb Meir learned asher lo yisel leish.
That's like kind of great.
And they say not. They say a chesa basula has to be literally a basula. So Rabbi Yaisi, what about Rabbi Yaisi? Mi de shavke le barzuke machlal de mukaseitz krameir spirale. When it came to the mukaseitz, Reb Shimon was alone in this. Reb Shimon said that only a kohen gadol, that only someone that would have been eligible to a kohen gadol is a kohen allowed to become contaminated to. And the mukaseitz is not eligible to a kohen gadol.
That's one opinion.
Yeah. Layis mukaseitz, I think, was everyone's opinion though. I think everyone held that. Question is the begeres, that was a machlekes.
Right.
But here it's a mukaseitz. It's the actual removal of the basulim. So Reb Shimon was alone in that. Reb Yaisi held like Reb Shimon when it came to a arusa, betrothal. And he argued with Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. But when it comes to mukaseitz, he agrees with Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. Problem is that the way Reb Meir and Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, the way that they learned these psukim was they took one path. The way Reb Shimon and Reb Yaisi, they took one path. Problem is that Reb Yaisi, because he drops Reb Shimon in the middle, so how does he fit the psukim according to the way he's learning when it comes to an arusa? If he's also going to hold like Reb Meir, so it goes like this. Minole, where does he know that a mukaseitz is mutter? It says milay haisalish, because she wasn't to a man. Very easy. That's what Reb Meir did. When it says va'afikse, but he already used a shalay haisalish to tell me an arusa, that it's excluding someone that is to a man, which is a woman that's betrothed. So you already used that pasuk. So Gemara says no. Chad milay haisa, chad milay ish. If you look carefully in the brisa, Rabbi Yaisi didn't use the word asher lo haisa leish. Just asher lo haisa. Prat larusa. That was excluding someone that was married or betrothed, excluding which is the sister that was betrothed. They can't become contaminated. Leish tells me to include that a mukaseitz is not included in that, and a mukaseitz could become she could become tamid. Okay, now we go further. We said a love the Rabbi Sabigeras. According to Reb Shimon and Reb Yaisi, a love is including a woman that's mature, that the brother could still become contaminated to her.
So wait, and mukaseitz is not considered a basula or a nusa?
Right. According to Rabbi Yaisi and Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, but according to Reb Shimon, she is considered. She is in the same category as someone that's married or someone when it comes to contamination. Okay. The problem is, Reb Shimon basula shlema mashma. Why do I need a pasuk? Reb Shimon held before that basula meant that she's a full basula, and bibsuleha meant that she wasn't, because Reb Shimon's view was that a kohen gadol was allowed to marry a begeres. Why? Because the word basula meant not a begeres. So bibsuleha meant yes, a begeres. That's what we learned before, that if it would have said basula, then I would have thought this. But now that it says bibsuleha, it teaches me differently. So Reb Shimon's view that the word basula meant that she's not a begeres. So here also, if it says no, Basula Shlema Mashma. We have a problem. Rab Shimon Basula is Basula Shlema. How could he say that it's including a begeres if the pasuk says Achosia Basula, that she has to be a full Basula, and she isn't a full Basula because she's already mature? The Gemara says, "Time did they nami hasa mehacha." Where does he get it from? He gets it from here. The Darashachi Midei love the Rabbi Sabigeres, since over here it says a love, which comes to tell me that he becomes contaminated also if his sister is a Begeres is mature. Mechlal the Basula Shlema Mashma. Obviously, when it says the word Basula, it means that she's a complete Basula. Because I need the word a love to tell me that even if she's a Begeres. So Basula itself would have told me that she needs to be not a Begeres. So we go back to Bibsuleha by the marriage, and we say that it's referring to even a Begeres. Okay, we have a new discussion now. Tanya, this will take us till the Mishnah approximately. The Tanya was taught in a brayso. Reb Shimon ben Yochai Yomer. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, a convert, if she's under 3 years old, she can marry a Kayan. It says by the war with Midian that they had to kill out all the women. The first they left the women, then they had to kill them out. It says, what are you doing? This was the whole problem, was the women that caused the men to sin. Now you go to battle, you leave the women. So they had to kill out all the women. But which women they had to kill? Only the ones that were old enough to have relations, but not if they were under 3. So it says all of the ones that were under 3, you can let them live for you.
I mean, a 4-year-old can have relations.
Right, but yeah.
Shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter like until they're 18.
I mean, I don't know. 4 years old. 3 years and 2 days.
There was no pedophilia.
Yeah, well.
What it has to do with is if a girl under 3 has relations, so it wasn't considered that she's not a basula anymore because the virginity will grow back.
Oh, okay.
Over 3, it doesn't grow back.
Okay.
And the relations under 3 is not considered anything. It's only over 3 that she's considered that she is a basula. Right. But regarding her, I don't know regarding him. Regarding her, it still grows back. The concern with the rape and all of that was that her value goes down when she gets married. But if she was under 3, the value doesn't go down anyway.
Didn't David say like it grows back after 5 years or something? I don't know. Why not?
No, we're not saying that a man is different than a woman. It also has to do with I think the doctors claim that there's no memory under 3 also.
I don't mean.
Yeah. Yeah, you ever hear that? They say there's no memory from under 3.
I remember when I was -3.
The adults don't remember anything from under 3. That's what the doctors say.
What kind of doctors do that?
I know the modern science. That's what they claim.
No trauma carried over? The kid has traumatic experiences between 0
I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting.
Still remember the Holocaust.
Uh-huh.
Because they were born in the circumstances or a flood.
Right. I don't know. Okay.
Right, I will research this with Professor Google.
Uh-huh. So what it says over there is all the children, the girl children, you should make live for you. What does it mean, like make live for you? That you can marry them. 1 second. Pinchas was a kohen. He was the one that took them to battle. He can't marry them. They're converts. They're not Jewish girls. Oh, he can marry them because they're under 3. The proof to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The Rabbanan argue with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. They say that no, a convert, even if she's under 3, she can't marry a kohen. What about that pasuk that says you go to battle, you take the girls back? It says no, lavadim l'shvachas. You can keep them as slaves. That's what they would do after in battle. They would keep the captives as slaves. If that's the case, according to Reb Shimon, it says that any woman that was not with a man, you could let them live. Why are you telling me it's only under 3? Even if it's over 3, if she wasn't with a man, you could let her live.
Would it be permissible, curious, like off subject, for a man to have relations with another woman out of wedlock,
Okay, well, those days,
even if he was married?
in those days, you can have more than one wife.
Right.
So it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same issue. Now there's another issue.
But is there like
Yeah,
any
there's
repercussion
yeah,
to
there's
having relations?
Yeah,
to
there's another issue
someone
of it's
and not having a marriage.
yeah, it's another issue in this machlekes the Rambam and the Rush. I think if it's a biblical prohibition or only rabbinic.
But it is a prohibition. Because it seems like back in those days when they would defeat a nation and capture other women, usually, unfortunately,
Who would take the women? It would be the soldiers would take them.
soldiers.
So
They wouldn't marry them. I mean, maybe
right.
they would.
No,
I guess they
no, they wouldn't. They would just live with them, and then keep them as slaves or whatever. But that we have a rule and that you're not allowed to do that. It's called the fast tayar. We have the whole. That's a whole discussion.
Can I give you the answer to the
Yeah.
3? So, on one hand, there's a person here who says, no, most people don't have any verbally accessible memories before the age of about 3 or 3.5. Our brains seem to be simply incapable of retaining that information. So it kind of like says that with dictum. On the other hand, this is a blog. You have all these other people who are telling you that they remember things from when they were 1, 2 in the crib that was attested to by their parents that they were absolutely correct in what they said, that it did happen,
Right.
and things like that. So take them.
Right.
Thank you for absolutely.
Give me back my trophy.
So the Gemara answers Kidder Rav Huna. The Gemara answers Kidder Rav Huna because the Rav Huna Rami. Rav Huna he posed the contradiction. Ksiv kol isha yadasish lemishkav zachar reigu. It says every woman that knew a man has to be killed out. Ha'ina yedas, but if she doesn't know, she didn't know a man, that means she didn't have relations, so then kaimu. Then you should have her let her live. Michlal. What do you mean when you said isha, any woman? That meant a mature woman. But that implies that if it would be a child, then it wouldn't matter. Dataf ben yadu ben la yadu. Kaimu. Then you let them live, even if they did have relations. Uksiv, however, the problem is, you have a clear pasuk that only if they didn't. So the diuk of the first pasuk, that a child, that it doesn't matter if they had relations or not, versus the second pasuk that says a child only that didn't have relations, is a contradiction with the first one. It says hayadu haraigu, but if they did have relations, then they have to be killed. So to resolve this, we say that what we meant, that having relations or not having relations, what we meant was eligible to have relations, which means over 3 years old. So that's what Reb Shimon Bar Yochai meant when he quoted that pasuk. Asher la yadu, that did not have relations, that meant that wasn't eligible, wasn't old enough to have relations. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa that says exactly this. It says, "V'chalishi yidasish b'rui liba l'kasem medaber atayim b'rui liba l'ina nivela mamish." Who do you leave alive? Doesn't mean only someone that was eligible, and maybe it means someone that was actually had relations that you don't allow them to live. We're talking about someone that was eligible, talking about the age, not if they actually had
This is in the
relations.
context with
The war with
Pinchas
Midian, yeah.
and Midian, and some people of Israel having relations with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened first. First, they sinned with the Midianite women, and then they went to battle with Midian, and they killed out all the men, and the women they left, and then Moshe sent them back. So the women were the problem. They had to kill all the women that were at least old enough to have relations.
Oh, not the ones that had relations.
We thought it meant that that maybe it means only the ones that had relations, and we went back and we said no. It means anyone that was old enough to be able to have relations. Minayadi. At that battle, how do we know who was old enough? Can you really tell the difference? A 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Amar Rav Huna bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasida Haviram Lefnei Tzitz. They brought them in front of the tzitz, which is the Kohen Gadol's the head plate. Kol shepanam merikos. If the face turned green, biyadu she really bal. That meant she was older 3. Kol shepanam merikos biyadu she really bal. If her face did not turn green, then she wasn't old enough. Rav Nachman says similar drukan. A sign that a sin was committed is hadrekin. Yeah. It's a disease. I think what do they translate as dropsy?
Ascites. ASCIT.
You know, if ascites.
It's fluid in the.
Is it the same thing?
Let me
If
check.
it's the same thing, then it's
I'll connect the venous.
The liver, the heart.
it's a liver.
If it's
Is
liver, then it causes ascites. Because once you have liver disease, the fluid backs up.
So it's a condition characterized by excess fluid in the tissues.
Excuse me?
Causes skin to look green.
Or yellow,
Yeah,
probably.
that's the jaundice all from the liver
Aura.
disease.
Yes.
And then they get
Identifies
them
as
with this. You ever see a chronic end-stage alcoholic? Their belly's blown up and they have their veins are all.
So get out everybody in Alabama.
Medusa's head, you know, like this. Because it's the circulation that when they were fetus, the portal circulation backs up and then everything's, which was from the belly buttons. It just shows us.
Wow.
Didn't Esther Malta have
So they said she had a green complexion.
No, I think that's olive green, like Mediterranean.
Oh,
This is
Uh-huh.
yellow. It says yellow.
yellow.
This is
Okay.
jaundice.
Ketzer b'davar ata imer. We find something similar to this. It says, "Vayimtzum yesh v'gilad arba meis nara besula shel yadu yesh lemishkav zachar." What happened was, the people went to battle with Binyamin after the Pilegesh Begiva. The Jewish people went to battle. They lost the battle twice, and then they went back, and then they won the battle. And there was one tribe, one city that didn't come to join in the battle. And what happened was everyone that had joined in had made a vow that they would not that they would not marry anyone from Binyamin. And now there were people from Binyamin that could not find wives. They felt bad that it was going to be the whole tribe would be wiped out. So they went to Yavish Gilad, which they were not part of this whole vow, and they didn't come to fight with them and all of that. And they went to battle with Yavish Gilad, and they took there were 400 girls there that they would then give to Binyamin to take as wives. So Minayadi, how did they know that they were never with the man? Amar Rav Kana, Hishivam al Pichavis Shel Yayin. They put them on a barrel. Be'ula Rechanaydev, Besulain Rechanaydev. The scent of the wine could travel through the woman's body if she was a Be'ula, if she had lived with a man. It would be more open, and the scent of the wine would travel through. And if she was a Besula, then it wouldn't travel through. So they wouldn't be able to smell in her breath the wine that was coming through the. The Gemara says, why didn't they just put it in front of the tzitz? You don't use the tzitz for punishment.
But what do you mean? They sat them?
On an open barrel. Yeah, saddled on a
So
barrel
you're
of wine.
saying if they were open on the bottom, then
The
the smell
would
on
come.
top. And if it was
Yeah.
totally closed, that's kind of wild. That's really wild.
I mean, old farmers.
No
Almanac.
comment,
Farmers almanac.
not repeating that to anyone.
Okay.
Wow. So you can't use it.
You can't use its its because this was for punishment.
3 guys walk into a bar, say to 3 girls, go sit on the barrel.
Easy, relax. Relax, doctor. Relax.
This Gemara is getting more and more wild.
I've skipped. So why did they use the tzitz for Midian? Only for Jewish people we don't use the tzitz for punishment, but for the nations we can use the tzitz for punishment. Yaakov Baridi says in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, which means that a girl that's under 3 that converted, she can marry a kohen. Amali Rab Zera le Rab Yaakov Baridi. Rab Zera says to Rab Yaakov Baridi, did you hear this directly, or did you just hear something else and you implied that this is the halacha? My klala, what would he have heard that would have had that implication? Rabbi Shua ben Levi, because Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, there was a city in Israel, Shakar Le'avir. There was a like a rumor or some sort of gossip that, what do they call it there?
They said contested the lineage.
Contested the lineage of that city. Veshaga Rebbe is Rebbe Rumanas. Rebbe sent, Rebbe Danasi sent Rebbe Rumanas Ubodka, and he examined what he checked out what happened in that city. A Matzaba, they found Bas Gieres, the daughter of a convert, or maybe a convert. Matzaba Bas Gieres. They found that there was this girl that was a convert that had married a kohen. The Rebbe said that's fine. So the city bit came back to being like the lineage was pure. So did Rabbi Shua ben Levi know that that was the halacha? Did Rabbi Yaakov Baridi hear from Rabbi Shua ben Levi that is the halacha, or did he just hear that story and claim that therefore that's the halacha? So Rabbi Yaakov Baridi tells Rabbi Zeh, Ramli b'feir shmili. No, I heard clearly Rabbi Shua ben Levi say that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. B'mechlalamai, what's the difference? It's the same point. If he heard it from the story or if he heard it directly. It says, Dilma shani hasam hayal v'insev insev. Maybe over there it was different because they were married already. The Rav Rabbi Yechon Tavaya Bageres Mukatzitz LeYisvim Nasanasi. Because we know that if the marriage has already taken place in certain instances, it's acceptable. Maybe not lechatchila, but b'diavad after they're married, it's acceptable. The Gemara says no. Hachiyash b'shlem hasam seiflias b'geres tachtav seiflias bul tachtav. Hacha seiflias zayna tachtav. You can't compare, because over here we have a question: is a girl that's converted under 3 years old, is she considered a zayna or not? So what's going to be the difference? Well, if a kohen is allowed to marry her. But if a kohen had already married her, so when do we say the kohen can stay married to a woman? That's only if it's a mukaseitz or a begeres. Why? Because even if he had only married her now, she would be considered a mukaseitz or begeres. But the convert, we're unclear of that status. If you say that she's a zayna, so now that she's married now, she's going to be considered, you're going to say now she's a zayna. No, she doesn't become a zayna when she's married. So it's a totally different scenario between if she's a begeres or not. Okay. Rav Safar Masni la Mechlala. Rav Safar says that Rabbi Yaakov Baridi heard this from the story. It was not that he heard it clearly from Rabbi Shua ben Levi. But Kashalei, and then he had this question. Mashani lehachi, and they answered, Ahu kayin, the insiv geres pchusim b'ashal and shanam v'yemechad, amle Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak mai hai. Oh, Mashani lehachi, period.
A Kohen marrying a ger is that just a Kohen Gadol that's also, or all Kohanim?
No, it would be any Cohen. Yeah, cannot marry a Gioris.
Geras.
Yeah.
Any Cohen.
Cannot marry a Gioris. But let's say she's under 3. We're learning now that he can marry her if she converted when she's under 3.
Some Swarthen that don't hold that, like Portuguese don't hold that.
That what? About a Cohen marrying it.
Can marry a child of a somebody.
I'm not sure about that.
Can they marry a child of a convert?
Yeah.
Yeah, because then. Oh wait. No, but they had to have been born after.
Born after the conversion. So, Mashani Lehachi, we say, how do you know that that's the halacha? And he answered, it has to be the halacha that he's allowed to marry lechatchila. Because if he wasn't allowed to marry lechatchila, then he should have had to have gotten divorced afterwards. Because Rebbe said they're allowed to stay married. So it must be that even lechatchila they were allowed to get married. Who kana?
He is allowed to.
Yeah.
Under 3 only,
Because the conversion was under 3.
and over 3 no.
Right. Who kana dinsav geras pchusav mashal shana v'yem echad. There was this kohen that married a convert that converted before she was 3 years old. Amalei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak my hi. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, "What are you doing?" Amalei Damar Rav Yaakov Baridi Amar Shul ben Levi Lach Rav Shimon ben Yochai. Says, I have the halacha. Rabbi Shul ben Levi, Rav Yaakov Baridi. They said that this is the halacha. Amalei Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, "Zil apik, go divorce her." And if you don't, Mafkin al Rabbi Yaakov Baridi mi'anach, I'll take Rabbi Yaakov Baridi out of your ears. I know what that means, but basically, that's not the halacha. Tanya, we have a brayso. Reb Shimon ben Yochai also said, the graves of a non-Jewish cemetery do not contaminate. You are my sheep, my flock. Tzayin marisi, the sheep of my flock. Adam atem, you are called man. Atem kriyam adam, ve'nai kriyam adam. When it says that if a man dies in a tent, who's it referring to? It's referring to a Jewish person, because we have a verse in the prophets in Yecheskel that says the Jewish people are called man. So that verse that says man tells me that it's only the Jewish people and not the non-Jews. They cause contamination. Meisvei, 1 second. It says over there that how many people were killed, how many men. It says that the soul of man was 16,000. Oh, see? A non-Jew is called a man. It says no, that's Mishum Behema, because it was in contrast to how many animals were killed. So they said how many men were killed, but otherwise I wouldn't have used that term. Asher Yeshba Harbe Mishtei Mesrei Ribai Adam. 1 second. Talking about the city of Nineveh, and over there wasn't talking about the animals. Asher Layada Ben Yamin L'Smalai Behema Rabba. Oh, and over there it does mention animals. It says Mishum Behema. Over there it also uses the term man because it wants to tell you that there's animals. Even though they weren't Jewish, it still uses that term. But 1 second, it says Kol Hayrig Nefesh V'chol Negeh B'cholol Tischato. Anyone that killed a person, anyone that touched the corpse has to be cleansed. So you see it does cause contamination. It says Dilma Iktal Chad Mi Yisrael. That's maybe because they had killed a Jewish person. One second. Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan say? Leinifgad mimenu ish. No Jewish person that died there. So they didn't kill a Jewish person. So therefore, you see that a non-Jew causes contamination also. That's the Rabbanan's proof. Problem is, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, leinifgad mimenu ish, la aveira. When it says that no Jewish person died, that's because of his own sins, but doesn't mean that no one was killed.
So, this is referring to the first line on the page. It's not like the right help. We've learned elsewhere, they do, I think we've learned
Yeah, that we're about to say that now. Ravina Amar, Ravina says, although the pasuk says that they're not metame ba'il, the ksiv adam kiyamas ba'il, mimago masami matina kra, but touching and carrying, does the pasuk say that they don't give off contamination? They do give off contamination. Okay. Let's leave it over here. Still a page behind. Yeah.
Maybe it's to send this book.
Where'd we have it?
Really, we missed an opportunity. We should have been writing.
Maybe it's to send this.
What is that?
For is it Joseph?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm making a Hanachos Tefillin this morning at the
Right, we're
minyan.
gonna sign this book for him.